The trading station called Nexus 7 floated in the dark space between three star systems. It was a place where hundreds of different alien species came to trade, talk, and learn about each other. The station was massive, with metal corridors that stretched for miles and markets that sold everything from glowing crystals to living plants that sang songs. Jiho stood behind his small booth in the cultural exchange sector. He was a human from Earth, specifically from Korea, and he had been assigned to share Earth culture with aliens who visited the station. His booth was simple. It had pictures of Earth on the walls, samples of human food in sealed containers, and a small cooking area where he could prepare fresh items. Today was slow. Most aliens walked past without stopping. They were interested in the weapons dealers or the technology merchants. Nobody seemed to care much about human culture. Jiho sighed and stirred the pot of hot chocolate he had made that morning. The rich brown liquid steamed gently, filling the air with the sweet smell of cocoa and sugar. The hot chocolate was Jiho's favorite thing to share. It was simple to make, and it reminded him of home. On cold winter nights in Seoul, his grandmother used to make hot chocolate for him. She would add a little cinnamon and tell him stories about brave warriors and kind spirits. The memory made him smile. Suddenly, Jiho noticed movement near his booth. A group of small aliens approached slowly. They were Velkari, a species he had only seen a few times before. The Velkari looked like a mix between cats and foxes. They had soft fur that ranged from gray to brown, large pointed ears that twitched at every sound, and bright eyes that seemed to take in everything around them. These particular Velkari were young, what their species called cubs. They were about the size of human children, maybe 8 or 9 years old in human terms. There were 5 cubs in the group. They moved together in a tight cluster, like they were afraid to get separated. Their ears were flat against their heads, which Jiho had learned meant they were nervous or scared. The cub at the front of the group was slightly braver than the others. She had light brown fur with white patches on her chest and paws. The brave cub stopped a few feet from Jiho's booth. She stared at him with wide yellow eyes. The other cubs huddled behind her, peeking around her shoulders. Jiho smiled warmly. He had learned that sudden movements scared many alien species, so he stayed very still. "Hello," he said softly. "Would you like to try something from Earth?" The brave cub's ears twitched. She looked back at her friends, then turned to Jiho again. "What is that smell?" she asked. Her voice was high and musical, like wind chimes. "That's hot chocolate," Jiho explained. He gestured to the pot on his small heating unit. "It's a drink that humans enjoy. It's warm and sweet." The cubs exchanged glances. One of them, a small gray male with nervous eyes, whispered something that Jiho couldn't hear. The brave female cub seemed to consider this, then took one small step forward. "Warm?" she asked. "Like fire?" Jiho shook his head. "Not that hot. Just warm enough to feel nice. On Earth, we drink it when we want to feel comfortable and happy." The brave cub seemed intrigued. "I am Tala," she said, placing a small paw on her chest. "These are my den mates. We are exploring the station for our learning task." "I'm Jiho," he replied. "Would you like to try some hot chocolate, Tala?" Tala's ears perked up slightly, but Jiho could see the fear in her eyes. The Velkari were known across the galaxy as a cautious species. They avoided risks and preferred safety above all else. Their home planet was filled with dangerous predators, which had taught them to be careful about everything. "Is it safe?" Tala asked. Jiho nodded. "Very safe. I drink it all the time. Look." He poured himself a small cup and took a sip in front of them. "See? It's just cocoa powder, milk and sugar. Nothing dangerous." Tala watched him carefully. Her friends remained silent behind her, their eyes fixed on the steaming liquid. Finally, Tala made a decision. She stepped closer to the booth and reached out her paw. Jiho poured a small amount of hot chocolate into a cup designed for alien species. It was made of a material that wouldn't burn their paws and had a wide base so it wouldn't tip easily. He handed it to Tala carefully. Tala held the cup in both paws. She could feel the warmth through the material. She brought it close to her nose and sniffed. Her whiskers twitched. The smell was strange but pleasant, like nothing she had encountered before. The other cubs watched in complete silence. This was the bravest thing they had seen Tala do in months. Usually, she wouldn't even try food from their own station cafeteria without checking with an adult first. Tala took a tiny sip. The hot chocolate touched her tongue, and her eyes went wide. The taste was incredible. It was sweet, but not too sweet, rich and smooth, with a warmth that spread from her mouth down to her stomach. But something else happened, too, something unexpected. As the warmth spread through her body, Tala felt different. The nervous flutter in her chest seemed to calm down. The constant worry that usually filled her mind became quieter. She didn't feel afraid anymore. The busy station, with its loud noises and strange aliens, suddenly seemed less scary. She felt like she could handle anything. Tala took another sip, then another. The feeling grew stronger. She looked at Jiho with amazement in her eyes. "This is wonderful," she breathed. I feel brave." The other cubs stared at her. One of them, a female with dark fur named Kessa, stepped forward cautiously. "Brave?" she asked. "From a drink?" Tala nodded enthusiastically. Her ears were standing straight up now, something that rarely happened. "Yes, try it, all of you." Jiho was surprised by Tala's reaction, but he was happy to pour more cups. One by one, the other cubs came forward. The nervous gray male, a stocky cub with orange fur, Kessa with her dark coat, and finally the smallest cub, who had been hiding behind all the others. Each cub took a sip, and each one had a similar reaction. Their eyes widened, their ears perked up. The tension in their small bodies seemed to melt away. They looked at each other in wonder, then at Jiho. "What is this magic?" the gray male asked. Jiho laughed softly. "It's not magic, it's just hot chocolate. Though my grandmother used to say it had a special power to make people feel better." Tala finished her cup and set it down carefully. She stood up straighter than before. "We must tell the others," she said to her friends. "We must tell them about the liquid bravery." "Liquid bravery?" Jiho asked. Tala nodded firmly. "That is what we will call it, because that is what it gives us, bravery in a cup." The cubs thanked Jiho and hurried away, chattering excitedly among themselves. Jiho watched them go with a smile on his face. He had expected many reactions to Earth's hot chocolate, but he had never expected it to be called liquid bravery. He looked down at the pot of hot chocolate, still steaming gently. Maybe his grandmother had been right about its special power after all. He poured himself another cup and settled back to wait for more visitors, wondering if the cubs would return. 3 days had passed since Tala and her friends first tried hot chocolate. Jiho arrived at his booth early in the morning, as he always did, carrying fresh supplies of cocoa powder and milk. He was surprised to find a line of Velkari cubs already waiting for him. There were at least 20 of them, maybe more. They sat in neat rows, their tails wrapped around their paws, their ears perked up with excitement. When they saw Jiho approaching, they began to chatter among themselves. "He's here! The human is here! Do you think he brought more liquid bravery?" "I hope so. I have a presentation today, and I'm so nervous." Jiho stared at the crowd in amazement. He had never had this many visitors to his booth before. Tala was at the front of the line, and she waved her paw when she saw him. "Good morning, Jiho," she called out. "We told everyone about your wonderful drink. They all want to try it." Jiho unlocked his booth and began setting up quickly. He put out his cups, started heating water, and mixed his cocoa powder. The cubs watched his every movement with intense focus, like they were studying an important ritual. As Jiho worked, Tala explained what had happened over the past few days. "After we drank your hot chocolate, everything changed," she said. "I went to my advanced math class, the one that always makes me want to hide. But I felt different. I raised my paw to answer questions. I even solved a problem at the board in front of everyone." Another cub, a small male with spotted fur, spoke up. "I talked to a Grindel ambassador. Grindels are huge and scary, with all those arms and teeth. But after the liquid Bravery, I wasn't afraid. I asked him questions about his planet for my school report." More cubs shared their stories. One had climbed to the top level of the station's recreation dome, something she had been too scared to do for months. Another had tried food from 5 different alien species at the cafeteria. A third had signed up for the Junior Explorer program, which involved going on short trips away from the station. Jiho listened to all their stories as he prepared cup after cup of hot chocolate. He was amazed. Could a simple drink really have such a powerful effect? He knew hot chocolate was comforting, but this seemed like something more. As he handed out the drinks, another human approached the booth. It was Hyejin, who worked in the station's medical research department. She was a scientist who studied how different species reacted to various substances. Hyejin was older than Jiho, with short hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Jiho," she said, "I need to talk to you about something unusual." Jiho looked up from pouring drinks. "What's wrong?" Hyejin gestured at the crowd of cubs. "This is what's unusual. Yesterday, the Velkari medical staff contacted me. They said their cubs have been acting strangely, more confident, less anxious, taking risks they never would have taken before. They wanted to know if there was some kind of chemical leak on the station affecting their young." Jiho felt worried. "Is there a problem? Are the cubs sick?" Hyejin shook her head. "No, they're perfectly healthy. Actually, they're healthier than usual. Their stress levels are down. Their social interactions have improved. But the medical staff couldn't figure out why until one of the cubs mentioned your hot chocolate." She pulled out a small datapad and showed Jiho several charts. "I've been monitoring the cubs who come here. Look at these readings. This is their heart rate before drinking hot chocolate. And this is after. It's calmer, more steady. Their brainwave patterns show reduced anxiety. It's fascinating." Jiho looked at the data, but didn't fully understand all the numbers and graphs. "So the hot chocolate is helping them?" "It appears so," Hyejin said. "But I want to understand how. May I take a sample of your hot chocolate to analyze?" Jiho agreed and poured her a cup. Hyejin took it back to her laboratory, while Jiho continued serving the growing line of cubs. Over the next week, the phenomenon grew. The cubs came every morning before school. They came during lunch breaks. They came in the evening after classes. Jiho's booth became the most popular location in the cultural exchange sector. He had to order more supplies 3 times. The cubs started calling themselves the Brave Ones. They formed a club and began encouraging each other to try new things. With their newfound confidence, they explored parts of the station they had always been too afraid to visit. They made friends with alien species they had previously avoided. They participated more in their classes and social groups. Hyejin continued her research. She set up a small workspace next to Jiho's booth so she could observe and take notes. She discovered that the hot chocolate didn't actually change the cubs' brain chemistry significantly. The cocoa had mild stimulant properties and the sugar provided energy, but nothing that would explain such dramatic behavioral changes. "It's psychological," Hyejin explained to Jiho one afternoon. "The hot chocolate gives them a ritual, a moment to pause and prepare themselves. The warmth and taste create a positive association. It's like a placebo effect, but a beneficial one. They believe the drink makes them brave. So it does." Jiho thought about his grandmother and her stories. Maybe that was what she had understood all along. The hot chocolate wasn't magic, but the comfort and confidence it provided were real. One evening, a very small cub arrived at the booth alone. He had pure white fur and moved with extreme caution, looking around nervously at every sound. His ears were flat against his head, and his tail was tucked between his legs. "Hello?" Jiho said gently. "What's your name?" "Nix," the cub whispered. His voice was so quiet that Jiho had to lean forward to hear him. "Would you like some hot chocolate, Nix?" Nix nodded but didn't speak. Jiho poured him a cup and handed it over carefully. Nix held it in his paws, trembling slightly. "Are you okay?" Jiho asked. Nix shook his head. "I have my coming-of-age trial next month," he said. "All cubs must complete it when they turn 10 cycles old. We have to navigate the maintenance tunnels under the station alone. I'm so scared. I don't think I can do it." Jiho had heard about these trials. They were an important tradition for Velkari cubs, meant to prove they were ready to become adolescents. The tunnels were dark and confusing, with many dead ends and some dangerous areas. "I heard about the liquid bravery from the other cubs," Nix continued. "They said it helped them. But I don't know if it can help someone like me. I'm scared of everything." Jiho sat down so he was at eye level with the small cub. "Nix, can I tell you something? The hot chocolate doesn't actually create bravery. It just helps you find the bravery that's already inside you." Nix looked confused. "But I don't have any bravery inside me." "Yes, you do," Jiho said. "You came here by yourself, didn't you? That took courage. You're talking to me, an alien from a species you've never met before. That takes courage, too. The bravery is there. You just need something to help you feel it." Nix took a small sip of hot chocolate, then another. Jiho watched as the cub's ears slowly lifted from his head. The trembling in his paws decreased. Nix took a deep breath. "It's warm," Nix said, "and sweet, and it makes my stomach feel good." "How do you feel?" Jiho asked. Nix thought about it. "A little less scared," he admitted. Maybe a tiny bit brave?" Jiho smiled. "That's a good start." As Nix finished his cup and left, Hyejin came over with an interesting piece of information. "I just received a message from the Velkari Elder Council," she said. "They want to meet with us tomorrow." "Why?" Jiho asked. "They didn't say exactly, but I think they're concerned about the changes in their cubs. This much sudden change in Velkari behavior is unprecedented. The elders are very traditional. They might not like what's happening." Jiho looked at his booth, at the empty cups scattered around, at the pictures of happy cubs on his data pad that parents had sent him. He felt proud of what the hot chocolate had done for these young aliens. But he also felt worried. What if the elders made him stop? Hyejin seemed to read his thoughts. "Don't worry too much," she said. "We'll explain everything. The cubs are happy and healthy. Surely that's what matters most." But Jiho knew that with traditional cultures, things were never that simple. He packed up his booth slowly that evening, wondering what the next day would bring. In the distance, he could hear a group of cubs laughing and talking loudly, their voices filled with confidence. Whatever happened with the elders, he was glad he had been able to help them, even if it was just for a little while. The meeting room was located in the administrative section of Nexus 7, a place Jiho had never visited before. The walls were made of smooth gray metal, and the lighting was dim, the way the Velkari preferred. Jiho and Hyejin sat on one side of a long table. Across from them sat 5 Velkari elders. The elders were much larger than the cubs, nearly the size of adult humans. Their fur was streaked with white and gray, showing their age. They wore formal robes decorated with symbols that Jiho didn't recognize. Their expressions were serious, and their ears were pointed straight up in a posture that showed authority. The eldest of the group, whose fur was almost completely white, spoke first. His name was Vorn, and his voice was deep and rough. "Human Jiho, We have called you here to discuss a matter of great concern to our community. Jiho straightened in his chair. He had prepared for this meeting, but he still felt nervous. Yes, Elder Vorn, how can I help? Vorn's yellow eyes fixed on Jiho. You have been giving our cubs a substance that changes their behavior. They call it liquid bravery. We want to know what this substance is and why you are influencing our young without permission from their families or our council. Hyejin leaned forward. Elder Vorn, if I may speak, I am Hyejin, a medical researcher on this station. I have analyzed the drink that Jiho provides. It contains only cocoa powder, milk, and sugar. These are all natural ingredients found on Earth. They are completely safe. Another elder, a female with brown fur named Sela, spoke up. Safe for humans, perhaps? But what about for Velkari? How do we know this substance isn't harmful to our biology? I have tested it extensively, Hyejin explained. She pulled out her datapad and displayed her research. The cubs show no negative physical effects. In fact, their health markers have improved. Lower stress hormones, better sleep patterns, improved social bonding indicators. That is exactly our concern, Vorn said sharply. You described changes to their biology and behavior. The Velkari way is caution. We survived for thousands of years because we taught our cubs to be careful, to think before acting, to avoid unnecessary risks. Your liquid bravery is making them reckless. Jiho felt his heart sink. He hadn't thought about it from this perspective. To him, the cubs becoming more confident was a good thing, but the Velkari had different values, shaped by their history and environment. With respect, Elder Vorn, Jiho said carefully, I don't think the cubs are being reckless. They're just becoming more confident. They're still being safe. They're just not letting fear control them. Fear exists for a reason, Sela said. It protects us. A cub without proper fear is a cub in danger. Before Jiho could respond, there was a knock on the meeting room door. Vorn looked annoyed at the interruption, but called out, Enter! The door opened, and to everyone's surprise, a group of cubs walked in. Tala was at the front, followed by about 15 others. They moved in an organized line, their heads held high. Jiho had never seen Velkari cubs carry themselves with such confidence in front of elders. Cubs, Vorn barked. This is a private meeting. You should not be here. Tala bowed respectfully but didn't back down. Elder Vorn, we heard that you were discussing the liquid bravery. We believe we have the right to speak about something that affects us directly. The elders exchanged shocked looks. Young cubs did not normally speak to elders this way. It was considered disrespectful. Vorn's fur bristled slightly. You may speak, but be brief and show proper respect. Tala nodded. Thank you, Elder. We came to tell you that the liquid bravery has helped us. It hasn't made us reckless or foolish. It has helped us become who we want to be. She gestured to the cub beside her, the spotted male who had spoken to the Grindel ambassador. Kento was afraid to speak to anyone outside our species. Now he has friends from 4 different alien races. He's learning about the galaxy instead of hiding from it. Another cub stepped forward. I'm Yara. I was too scared to join any clubs or activities. Now I'm in the junior science program. I'm learning about stars and planets. The liquid bravery didn't make me careless. It made me curious. One by one, the cubs shared their stories. They talked about classes they now enjoyed, fears they had overcome, and dreams they were now pursuing. They spoke with respect, but also with conviction. Jiho watched Vorn's face carefully. The old elder's expression was hard to read, but his ears had shifted slightly backward, which Hyejin had told Jiho meant uncertainty or consideration. When the cubs finished, Sela spoke. These changes sound positive, young ones, but what happens when you face real danger? What if this false confidence leads you into a situation you cannot handle? Tala was quiet for a moment. Then she said, The coming-of-age trials are next month. The tunnel navigation test. That is a real challenge with real dangers. Let us prove that the liquid bravery helps, rather than harms. Vorn's ears perked up. What are you proposing? A demonstration, Tala said. Let some cubs take the trial with liquid bravery and some without. Compare the results. If we are truly being foolish and reckless, it will show, but if we are simply being appropriately brave, that will show too. The elders discussed this among themselves in their own language, speaking too quickly and quietly for the translators to pick up. Finally, Vorn turned back to the group. We will consider this proposal, he said. But understand, cubs, that the trials are dangerous. Every year some cubs must be rescued from the tunnels, some get lost for hours, some are injured by falling debris or sharp metal. We do not want to put you in greater danger. We understand, Tala said, but we believe we can handle it. The liquid bravery doesn't make us stupid. It makes us strong enough to use the intelligence and training we already have. The elders dismissed the cubs, who filed out quietly. Once they were gone, Vorn turned to Jiho and Hyejin. We will allow this demonstration to proceed. However, we have conditions. First, only cubs who volunteer may participate in the liquid bravery group. Second, all cubs will be monitored carefully during the trials. Third, if we see any indication that the liquid bravery is causing dangerous behavior, we will stop the trials immediately and forbid its further distribution. Jiho nodded. I understand, Elder Vorn. Those terms are fair. There is one more thing, Vorn continued. If the cubs succeed, we will reconsider our position on your drink. But if they fail, or if any cub is harmed, you must leave this station and never return to Velkari space. Agreed? Jiho felt the weight of that condition. Being banished from an entire species' territory was serious, but he believed in the cubs and in the hot chocolate. He looked at Hyejin, who gave him a small nod of support. Agreed, Jiho said. The meeting ended, and Jiho and Hyejin walked back to the cultural exchange sector in silence. Finally, Hyejin spoke. Are you sure about this? There's a lot at stake. Jiho thought about Tala, about Nyx, about all the cubs who had found confidence in a simple cup of hot chocolate. I'm sure. These cubs deserve the chance to prove themselves. Over the next 3 weeks, preparations for the trial began. The Elder Council announced that they would conduct a special version of the coming-of-age trials, with both groups completing the course on the same day for comparison. Cubs who wanted to participate in the Liquid Bravery group could volunteer, while others would complete the traditional trial without it. Jiho taught the volunteering cubs how to properly prepare hot chocolate. He showed them the exact measurements, the right temperature, and the importance of quality ingredients. He wanted them to understand that this wasn't magic, but a ritual that required care and attention. Hyejin continued her research, documenting everything. She interviewed cubs from both groups, tracked their training progress, and monitored their health. She wanted to have as much data as possible to present to the elders after the trials. Nyx came to Jiho's booth every day. The small white cub was still nervous, but he was determined to be part of the Liquid Bravery group. I want to prove I'm not just the scared little cub everyone thinks I am, he told Jiho. Jiho taught Nyx the same thing he had taught all the cubs. The hot chocolate is just a tool. The real bravery comes from you. Remember that when you're in the tunnels. As the day of the trial approached, the entire Velkari community on the station was talking about it. Some adults supported the cubs and their liquid bravery. Others sided with the traditional elders, believing that the old ways were best. The debate spread beyond the Velkari community. Other species on the station heard about it and became interested. The trial was becoming more than just a test for the cubs. It was becoming a symbol of whether change and new ideas could coexist with tradition. The night before the trial, Jiho couldn't sleep. He lay in his small quarters, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he had made the right choice. What if something went wrong? What if a cub got hurt because of the confidence the hot chocolate had given them? The responsibility felt heavy on his shoulders. But then he remembered Tala's face when she first tried hot chocolate. The wonder in her eyes, the joy of feeling brave for the first time. That had to count for something. That had to be worth the risk. Tomorrow would tell. The morning of the trial arrived with unusual activity on Nexus 7. The maintenance tunnels were normally closed to the public, but today, the Elder Council had opened an observation area where parents and community members could monitor the Cubs' progress through screens connected to security cameras throughout the tunnel system. Jiho stood in the preparation area with Hyejin, watching as the Cubs gathered. There were 12 Cubs in the traditional group and 6 in the liquid Bravery group. The difference in numbers showed how divided the community was about this new approach. Many parents had forbidden their Cubs from participating in the liquid Bravery trial, worried about the unknown risks. The traditional group would go first. They were led by a confident female Cub named Rena, whose parents were both respected engineers on the station. Rena had trained extensively for this trial and was considered likely to succeed quickly. Elder Vorn stood at the entrance to the tunnels, his formal robes flowing around him. "Cubs of the traditional path," he announced, "you will navigate the maintenance tunnels using only your wits, your training, and the caution that has kept our species safe for generations. The route is marked with subtle signs that only careful observation will reveal. There are dead ends, false paths, and dangerous areas you must avoid. Your goal is to reach the central hub at the heart of the tunnel system and return here safely. You may help each other, but you must all reach the central hub to complete the trial." The traditional Cubs nodded seriously. Their ears were alert, their bodies tense with focus. They entered the tunnels in single file, disappearing into the darkness. Jiho and everyone else watched on the large screens as the Cubs began their journey. They moved slowly, very slowly. At every junction, they stopped to examine their options carefully. When they encountered a fork in the path, they debated quietly before choosing a direction. When they saw a gap in the floor, they spent long minutes testing its stability before crossing. Their caution was admirable, but it was also painful to watch. At one point, the Cubs spent 10 minutes discussing whether to cross a simple metal bridge that was clearly safe. They were so afraid of making a wrong choice that making any choice became difficult. After 1 hour, the traditional group had only covered about a third of the tunnel system. After 2 hours, they encountered a collapsed section of tunnel and had to backtrack significantly. One Cub became so stressed that she sat down and refused to move, and the others had to spend 20 minutes encouraging her to continue. After 3.5 hours, the traditional group finally reached the central hub. They were exhausted, stressed, and 2 of them were crying from the pressure. But they had made it. The journey back took another 2 hours. When they emerged from the tunnels, they looked relieved but drained. Elder Vorn congratulated them formally. "You have completed the trial through caution and careful thought. This is the traditional way." Now it was time for the liquid Bravery group. The 6 Cubs gathered around Jiho. There was Tala, the first Cub to ever try hot chocolate. There was Nix, the small white Cub who had been too scared to even leave his family's quarters a month ago. There were 4 others: Miko, a stocky Cub with orange fur; Kessa, the dark-furred female who was Tala's best friend; Yara, who loved science; and Kento, who had made friends with the Grindel ambassador. Jiho had prepared hot chocolate that morning, keeping it warm in an insulated container. He poured each Cub a cup. They held their cups in both paws, savoring the warmth and the sweet smell. "Remember," Jiho said quietly, "the hot chocolate doesn't give you abilities you don't have. It just helps you access the courage and intelligence that's already inside you. Trust yourselves, trust each other, and be smart about the risks you take. The cubs drank slowly, letting the warmth fill them. Jiho watched their transformation. Their ears lifted. Their tails straightened. Their eyes became focused and calm. It wasn't arrogance or recklessness he saw in their faces. It was confidence, tempered with awareness. Elder Vorn addressed them with the same words he had used for the traditional group, explaining the challenge and the dangers. Then the liquid Bravery group entered the tunnels. The difference was immediately visible on the screens. The liquid Bravery group moved faster but not carelessly. At junctions, they paused to assess their options, but they made decisions quickly and moved forward with conviction. When Tala suggested a path, the others trusted her judgment. When Nyx pointed out a potential danger, they listened and adjusted their route. 15 minutes into their journey, they encountered a wide gap in the floor. The same type of obstacle that had made the traditional group hesitate. Miko stepped forward, examined it briefly, and then jumped across with confidence. He landed safely and turned to help the others. One by one, they crossed, with the stronger cubs helping the smaller ones. "That was dangerous," an elder in the observation area exclaimed. "They should have found another way." But Hyejin pointed at the screen. "Look at how they're working together." Miko tested his landing first before calling the others. Tala positioned herself to catch anyone who might slip. They assessed the risk and took appropriate precautions. The liquid Bravery group continued through the tunnels with impressive efficiency. They communicated clearly with each other, shared information about what they observed, and made collaborative decisions. When they reached a section of tunnel that looked unstable, they didn't panic or freeze. Instead, Yara used her science knowledge to assess the structural integrity, and Kento suggested an alternative route. After just 45 minutes, they reached the central hub. The observation area erupted in surprised murmurs. No group had ever reached the hub that quickly. "They're being reckless," Vorn muttered, but his ears were tilted in a way that suggested uncertainty rather than conviction. The return journey was equally impressive. The cubs encountered the same collapsed section that had caused the traditional group to backtrack. But instead of treating it as an impossible obstacle, Tala suggested they could climb over it using a series of maintenance ladders that were visible on the wall. "Those ladders aren't part of the marked path," Sela protested. "But they're safe and they're there to be used," Hyejin countered. "The cubs are solving problems creatively." The liquid Bravery group used the ladders to bypass the collapsed section. Nyx, despite being the smallest, climbed with determination. When he hesitated halfway up, Kessa climbed beside him and encouraged him softly. "You can do this, Nyx. You've come so far already. Just a little more." Nyx took a deep breath and continued climbing. When he reached the top, his face showed pure joy. He had overcome one of his biggest fears. The liquid Bravery group emerged from the tunnels after only 90 minutes total. They were tired but energized, proud but not arrogant. They had worked as a team, made smart decisions, and completed the trial in less than a third of the time the traditional group had taken. The observation area was silent. Then slowly, some of the watching parents began to applaud. Others joined in. Soon the entire area was filled with the sound of appreciation. Even some of the elders looked impressed, though Vorn maintained his serious expression. Jiho felt relief wash over him. The cubs had done it. They had proven that courage and caution could coexist, that the liquid Bravery enhanced, rather than replaced, their good judgment. But Elder Vorn raised his paw for silence. "The trial is complete, but our evaluation is not. The council will meet to discuss what we have witnessed. We will announce our decision tomorrow." That evening, Jiho's booth was crowded with well-wishers. Cubs from both groups came to talk about their experiences. Rena, the leader of the traditional group, approached Tala. "Your group was impressive," Rena admitted. "I was taught that speed means recklessness. But you were fast and safe at the same time. Tala smiled. Your group was impressive too. Your caution kept everyone completely protected. Maybe there's value in both approaches. Jiho listened to the cubs talking and learning from each other. This was what he had hoped for. Not competition, but understanding. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Nix came to Jiho with his parents. His mother was a small female Velkari with gentle eyes, and his father was larger with silver-streaked fur. "Human Jiho," Nix's mother said, "we want to thank you. Nix has always been so frightened. We worried he might never pass his trials. But you helped him find his strength." Nix's father nodded. "We were against the liquid bravery at first. We thought it was dangerous foreign influence. But we watched our son climb those ladders today. We saw him overcome fear that has controlled him his whole life. Whatever you've given him, it's been a gift." Jiho felt emotional. Nix did it himself. The hot chocolate just helped him believe he could. Nix looked up at Jiho with his large eyes. "Will you teach me to make liquid bravery? I want to be able to make it whenever I need it." "Of course," Jiho said. "I'll teach anyone who wants to learn." As night fell on the station, Jiho sat alone at his booth, thinking about the day. Tomorrow the elders would make their decision, but regardless of what they decided, something important had happened. The cubs had proven that courage wasn't reckless and that new ideas could honor tradition while also bringing positive change. Hyejin joined him, carrying her datapad filled with data from the trials. "The numbers are remarkable," she said. "The Liquid Bravery group completed the trial faster, but with the same safety record as the traditional group. 0 injuries, 0 incidents. And look at their stress hormone levels during the trial, elevated but controlled. They were aware of dangers but not paralyzed by them." "Do you think the elders will allow hot chocolate to continue?" Jiho asked. Hyejin considered this. "Vorn is traditional, but he's also fair. He can't deny what everyone saw today. The question is whether he can accept that the old ways aren't the only good ways." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars through the station's viewports, waiting for tomorrow's answer. The Elder Council called their meeting at midday in the station's main gathering hall. This time, it was open to the entire Velkari community. The hall was packed with adults and cubs, all waiting to hear the decision about liquid bravery. Jiho and Hyejin sat near the front, with the cubs from both trial groups sitting in the rows behind them. Tala gave Jiho an encouraging smile. Nix's ears were flat with nervousness, but he managed a small wave. The 5 elders entered and took their places at the raised platform. Elder Vorn stood in the center, his white fur gleaming under the lights. The hall fell silent. "We have considered the events of yesterday's trials carefully," Vorn began. His deep voice carried through the hall. "We have examined the data provided by researcher Hyejin. We have discussed the matter among ourselves and consulted with the families of the participating cubs. We have come to a decision." Jiho held his breath. Vorn continued. "The Liquid Bravery group completed their trial with speed and efficiency. They demonstrated courage, teamwork, and problem-solving skills. They also showed appropriate caution when necessary. We cannot deny these facts." A murmur ran through the crowd. This sounded positive. "However," Vorn said, and Jiho's heart sank, "we are concerned about establishing a dependence on a foreign substance. The Velkari way has always been self-reliance. What happens when the liquid bravery is not available? Will our cubs be unable to function?" Tala stood up from her seat. "Elder Vorn, may I speak?" Vorn looked surprised, but nodded. "You may." Tala walked to the front of the hall, her tail held high. "Elder Vorn, the liquid bravery doesn't create our courage. It reminds us that we have it. I proved this to myself yesterday. During the trial, there was a moment when I felt afraid. My paws were shaking as we approached a difficult climb. But I didn't need more liquid bravery in that moment. I remembered how I felt after drinking it. I remembered that I am capable and strong. That memory was enough. Nick stood up, too, though his voice was quieter. I'm still a scared cub in many ways, but now I know that I can be brave when I need to be. The liquid bravery taught me that. I won't always need the drink, but I'll always need that lesson. Other cubs began standing, sharing their own stories. One by one, they explained how the hot chocolate had been a starting point, not a permanent crutch. They had learned to believe in themselves, and that belief would last long after the taste of hot chocolate faded. Elder Sella leaned forward and spoke. What you cubs are describing sounds more like training than dependence. Like a teacher who helps you learn something difficult, then steps back to let you do it alone. Exactly, Hyejin said, standing. That's what my research shows. The hot chocolate provides initial confidence, which allows the cubs to have positive experiences. Those positive experiences then build real, lasting confidence. It's not a drug or a crutch. It's a teaching tool. Vorn was quiet for a long moment. The other elders whispered among themselves. Finally, Vorn spoke again. The council has decided that liquid bravery will be permitted on this station with conditions. First, it will be classified as a confidence supplement, available to any cub whose parents consent. Second, human Jiho will train Velkari adults on how to properly prepare it, so our community is not dependent on one individual. Third, its use will be monitored by our medical staff to ensure no negative effects develop over time. The hall erupted in cheers and applause. The cubs jumped up and down with excitement. Jiho felt Hyejin pat his shoulder, and he realized he was smiling so wide his face hurt. But Vorn wasn't finished. There is one more thing. We recognize that this simple earth drink has brought significant benefit to our young ones. As such, we propose that human Jiho establish a permanent cultural exchange program here on Nexus 7 with hot chocolate as its centerpiece. We believe other species might benefit from the liquid bravery as well. Jiho was stunned. What had started as a small booth sharing Earth culture had turned into something much larger. Over the following weeks, word of the liquid bravery spread beyond the Velkari community. Jiho's booth expanded into a proper establishment with help from the station administrators. He was given a larger space and resources to serve more people. A Korean station administrator named Minho, who worked in the commerce division, helped Jiho set up the business aspects. You've created something special here, Minho told him. Not just a product, but a symbol. People across the galaxy are calling this place where humans help aliens find their courage. Different species began visiting to try hot chocolate. The Shenti, who were crystalline beings that communicated through light and sound, found that hot chocolate helped them before difficult negotiations. The warmth somehow made it easier for them to achieve the calm mental state needed for their light-based communication. The Drell, an aquatic species that wore environmental suits on the station, discovered that hot chocolate warmed their core temperature, which made it easier for them to spend time in the station's normal atmosphere. They began drinking it before surface missions on planets colder than their ocean world. Even the massive Grindles, who had initially seemed too tough to need any confidence boost, admitted that hot chocolate helped them relax before important meetings. It reminds us that strength and gentleness can coexist, one Grindel ambassador explained. Jiho trained Velkari adults on how to make hot chocolate, as the council had required, but he also trained members of other species. Soon, there were multiple hot chocolate booths across the station, each run by someone Jiho had taught. Tala, now a minor celebrity among the cubs, helped run the Velkari-specific booth, serving her friends and teaching younger cubs about the drink. Hyejin published her research, which attracted attention from scientists across the galaxy. She was invited to present at conferences about the psychological and social effects of cultural exchange programs. Her work helped establish guidelines for how different species could safely and beneficially adopt practices from each other's cultures. 3 months after the trials, a new species arrived at the station. They were called the Pression, a moth-like species with delicate wings and soft, fuzzy bodies. They were extremely timid, rarely leaving their home world, but a small delegation had been sent to Nexus 7 to explore the possibility of joining the galactic community. The Pression delegates were terrified of everything. They flinched at loud noises, hid when large species walked past, and seemed overwhelmed by the busy station environment. They spent most of their time in their quarters, too afraid to explore or engage with other species. One day, a young Pression named Silly ventured out alone. She had heard whispers about a place where scared beings could find courage. She fluttered nervously through the corridors, her wings tucked tight against her body, until she found Jiho's original booth, which he still operated personally when he had time. Jiho looked up to see the trembling Pression hovering near his booth. She was beautiful, with wings that shimmered like silver in the station's lights, but she looked absolutely terrified. "Hello," Jiho said softly. "Welcome. How can I help you?" Silly's voice came through her translator as a whisper. "I heard about liquid bravery. I heard it helps people who are afraid. Is this true?" Jiho smiled gently. "It's true. Would you like to try some?" Silly landed on the ground, her wings still twitching nervously. "I am so scared all the time. My people sent me here to learn about other species, but I can barely leave my room. I don't know if a drink can help someone like me." "Let's find out together," Jiho said. He prepared a cup of hot chocolate, making sure it was the right temperature for her species, based on what Hyejin's research had revealed about Pression biology. He handed it to Seely, who held it carefully in her delicate, fuzzy hands. Tala happened to be visiting Jiho's booth at that moment. She came over and sat next to Seely. "I was scared too," Tala said. "All Velkari are. But the liquid bravery helped me realize something important. Being scared is okay. Everyone gets scared. But we don't have to let fear stop us from living." Seely took a small sip. Then another. Her large eyes widened and her wings slowly spread out a little. "It's warm," she breathed. "And sweet. And it makes me feel different. Less heavy." "How do you feel?" Jiho asked. Seely thought about it. "I feel like maybe I can do this. Maybe I can explore this station. Maybe I can talk to other species. Maybe I'm stronger than I thought." Tala smiled. "You are. The hot chocolate just helps you remember that." Over the next few days, Seely came back to the booth regularly. Each time she seemed a little braver. She started talking to other species at the market. She attended a cultural event. She even made friends with a Grindel, despite the size difference. When Seely's delegation prepared to leave the station, she came to thank Jiho one last time. "I'm going back to my people with good news," she said. "The galaxy is not as scary as we thought. We can be part of it. And I'm going to bring back the recipe for liquid bravery to share with everyone." After Silly left, Jiho stood at his booth looking around at the station he now called home. The booth had a sign in multiple languages that read, "Courage in a cup, human hot chocolate." Below that, in smaller letters, it said, "Made with cocoa, milk, sugar, and the belief that you're braver than you think." Hyejin came by with her datapad, as she often did. "I have the latest numbers," she said. "Hot chocolate is now being consumed by 47 different species on this station. We're getting requests from other stations to set up similar programs. You've started something that's spreading across the galaxy." Jiho shook his head in wonder. "All because of a simple drink my grandmother used to make for me." "It's not about the drink," Hyejin said. "It's about what it represents. Humans gave the galaxy something unexpected. Not weapons or advanced technology, but comfort. A way to feel brave enough to be who we want to be." That evening, as Jiho cleaned his booth and prepared to close for the night, he saw Nyx approaching with a group of younger cubs. Nix was teaching them how to make hot chocolate, explaining each step carefully. "And you stir it gently," Nix was saying. "The warmth spreads through it, just like courage spreads through you. Remember, the hot chocolate doesn't make you brave. It reminds you that you already are." The younger cubs watched with wide eyes, just like Nix had watched Jiho months ago. The cycle was continuing. Knowledge and courage were being passed down, one cup at a time. Jiho smiled and turned to look out at the stars through the station's viewports. Somewhere out there, Seely was traveling back to her people with the recipe for liquid bravery. Somewhere, Ashenti was preparing for an important negotiation with a warm cup in their appendages. Somewhere, a Velkari cub was discovering courage they didn't know they had. His grandmother had been right all along. Hot chocolate did have a special power. Not magic, but something just as valuable. It had the power to make people pause, to comfort them, and to remind them that they were capable of more than they believed. And now, that power was spreading across the galaxy, one warm cup at a time. Not as a human conquest or achievement, but as a gift freely shared. A simple reminder that courage exists in everyone, just waiting to be discovered over a cup of hot chocolate on a cold day, or a scary day, or any day when someone needs to remember that they're braver than they think. Jiho poured himself one last cup for the evening and raised it toward the stars in a silent toast. To his grandmother who taught him about hot chocolate, to the cubs who taught him about courage, and to the galaxy, which had taught him that the smallest gestures could create the biggest changes. The hot chocolate was warm and sweet, just like always. And somewhere in that warmth, Jiho felt brave enough to face whatever tomorrow would bring.